Hi, everybody. I'm Ashleigh Banfield. Welcome to Drop Dead Serious, and we're doing something a little crazy to kick off our weekly series. We are dropping a bonus episode. If you checked out our episode about Scamanda with the host of the incredible podcast and Hulu and ABC docuseries, Charlie Webster was one of my initial guests to kick off this interview portion of Drop Dead Serious. It was a fantastic, far-reaching conversation on everything that host, that dogged host and creator of Scamanda has sort of gone through, been through, and all this new information that she had in a jailhouse phone call with Amanda C. Riley. If you have not yet seen or heard about Scamanda, run, don't walk. It is one of the most popular podcasts of all time, and it is a fantastic 4-part ABC and Hulu docuseries. It's the story of a woman who is just the most exquisite liar in the world and stole so much money, time, effort, and people's souls. She's just a soul crusher. Anyway, it's a great, great story. You got to do it. If you have seen Scamanda, then you're going to absolutely love the guest I have today. So without further ado, I bring to you now the executive producer and creator of the podcast Scamanda and producer of the Hulu ABC documentary Scamanda, Nancy Moscatiello. Nancy Moscatiello. Oh, I already told you this a million times, but I'm a big, big fan. It's so rare to find someone who's so incredibly dogged as an investigator and so persistent for so long. I want to start even before that, though. How did you end up getting a cancer scam story in the first place?
Yeah, it's one of those types of stories that I think I've always been intrigued by, and I think a lot of folks working in television production and producing, it's like one of those, like, you want to find and you want to be able to out someone, but you just have to really have the time and the patience, and a lot of times productions don't really afford the time to take what you need to do in order to get to the end result. So when I started at the show at the time I was working on, that was one of the things we were like, we want to go after scammers, cancer scammers in particular. I think a lot of us had been touched by cancer in our life, and we just found it so egregious that people were doing that, and just wanted to be able to pursue that if possible. That's why I posted on Facebook this group that I saw that was a group about scammers and people faking illnesses or different things, and just said, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Anybody want to talk to me or give me information to kind of get that jumping off point.
And I know Amanda's friends got back to you, but didn't you get like a mountain of responses? I feel like this is, it's horribly easy to do,
Yeah. I did not get a mountain. I got a handful of ones that were different, maybe like Ponzi schemes or financial crimes that people were kind of caught up in and that they were upset about. And we pursued some of those also that we ended up doing on the show. But cancer-wise, I think, because again, this was back in 2015, it's the internet, the way like social media and all that stuff was kind of just taking off or getting to be the point where people were putting themselves out there more publicly. Maybe it was going on in small towns all over the place where maybe the local sheriff or somebody would say, hey, Susie, knock it off. Like, we know you have cancer. Whatever. It didn't really grow beyond or on a bigger level.
They couldn't scale it. They could do it, but they couldn't scale it. Yeah.
But,
like any business.
That was kind of the start of blogging. And she was new to it, but it was something that, I wasn't into. It wasn't something I was on my radar that I would participate in a lot. So it was just, I think, that perfect storm of just getting out there, putting out a lot of information, and she also had Instagram, she had Facebook, she was doing this on multiple platforms because it was her life, that it was sharing everything. So
you still had a job to do. You still had to produce television. It's not as though you could spend your entire bandwidth on Amanda. And I think that's why I'm so fascinated with you. We feed the beast every night, an hour of television every night. I can barely see straight. But to stay on a story for that many years, half a decade, before the payoff, how, A, did you do it mentally? And then B, how did your bosses allow it? Because they're usually the ones to say cut bait.
Yeah, no, my bosses were great at the like that show that I was on, it was up and running for about 3 years. And this kept going beyond that. So that was part of the thing of why, I shot stuff and I went and we got some undercover. We went to the raid. Like we went and did stuff in preparation to someday bring that story to the show I was on. And the show went away, but the story kept going because it just federal investigations can take a super long time, and it's really a long game of patience. I kept up with, you part of what the first hurdle was once I got involved in it was like, okay, we just got to get her to stop, and that wasn't going to happen. And also just wanting to get justice for Alita. Because at that point, when I got involved, Jessica was already in custody of Corey and Amanda. And I just felt like after going through all of her court transcripts and stuff from family court, like this is even worse than
This is
faking
bad.
cancer, right?
It's
There's
cruelty on another
couple,
level.
a couple
for
of dynamics.
for the listeners and viewers who may not be all in on Amanda yet, or
Yeah.
Scamanda, so Corey is Amanda's husband. I think he's in on it. At least it sure feels like it. He's not been charged. He's not been convicted. Alita was Corey's ex-wife, and
Yes.
Corey and Alita, while married, had a babysitter named Amanda. Corey packs up, moves out, and suddenly he's taken up and married to the babysitter. So it's all ugly on a number of levels. And then Corey and Amanda went after young Jessa, and they tried to, they went after custody and got it and took Jessa out of Alita's house. So that when we throw these names out, there's the tree chart. Yeah. So again, I keep coming back to, in your gut, it feels very deflating as weeks go on and months go on when you're doing these investigations. Was there a point, Nancy, where you said, this is not going to happen? I need to cut bait. I need to move on.
No, I don't think so. Only because I was in touch, not often, but periodically with Agent Lee. Just because if something came my way, another person that I discovered, because I was always keeping up on her blog, I was always keeping up on her Facebook and different places, and the small community of friends that actually talked with me were like, okay, if we hear stuff, we'll let you know. And I was able to pass that information along to Agent Lee, and she was always very receptive, like, great, thank you.
And
like,
Agent
hey,
Lee, catching
Yeah.
some people up, that's the IRS
Oh,
agent
right.
who was on this long investigation with you. There was also a local,
Yeah, Detective Martinez.
Detective Martinez, the financial, the one-man band in the division where he worked. He
And
had
and
nothing.
I think
He had
that
no
shocked
assets.
me. Yeah, that
Yeah.
shocked me when I finally got through to someone there.
By the way,
And even
thank you for informing the public about the limitation that police departments actually have to chase down these kinds of bad guys. I mean, there's bad guys out on the streets with guns and knives and punches,
Yes.
and then there are bad guys like Amanda who are ripping your soul out from you and stealing from you blind and destroying your faith in humanity, which are pretty horrible crimes as well. And we have very little staffing in most departments around the country for this. And Moskowitz was alone in that. What, San Jose? San Jose Police?
Yeah, which I was surprised by when I reached out to the office a few times, and the woman that was taking my calls, she was great. She was like, he's the only guy, our only Detective Martinez. He's the only one here. It's going to take time. I said, and I would just check in, like, I really think he's going to find this interesting. It's just so bad. And so we, every now and then I'd call him and say, hey, so this is what I'm noticing now. And she'd say, I'll tell him, but I don't know when he'll get back to you. And eventually he did. I had sent over a lot of information for him to digest and kind of wrap his head around. And I think because it was such a unique situation, it kind of piqued his interest as how it piqued mine, right? I was like, whoa, if this is what's going on.
That's where I want to drill down. Can I just get in there and pull on that thread for a second? Because something really endeared you to this mystery, to this woman, to this story, to the psychosis, to this like pervasive awfulness. And clearly the same kind of something got him, because he had files on either side of his desk that were miles high of cases that he was supposed to get to, needed to get to, had to solve. He's never going to be able to solve even a fraction of them, but something hooked him. What is it about Amanda that hooked you, Martinez, Agent Lee, and me, and every other one of the multi-million people around the world who can't get enough of the story?
I think for me on a personal level, I had lost my sister at a young age. She was in her early 40s, had two little kids to cancer, to lung cancer. And so I went through that with her. I knew what cancer looked like. I live on the West Coast. She was on the East Coast. I was flying back and forth every month. Like, it devastated not just her immediate family, but her friends, her my mom, like everyone. So just knowing what that was like to try and do everything you can. You know, she did the clinical trials, she did immunotherapy. In fact, my sister was one of the first folks to receive Keytruda, the drug that Amanda was
Amanda
claiming to
lied
be
about.
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when that popped up, I was like, "Oh, I know all about this. Let's get into it. Let me look at this."
Thank
So,
God, right? Thank God you
mhm,
had that, because that would have been a whole other
yeah.
multi-month project for you to get your head into what really does go on in cancer treatment.
Yeah, and again, it's not every treatment's different and every person going through it responds differently. You see all types of stuff. I think just knowing what my sister went through and then looking at what Amanda was supposedly going through at stage 3, at stage 4, telling everyone she was terminal, like it was night and day. Like, so that's kind of what it was. It just got it left such a crappy feeling in me to know that somebody could be out there doing that. And then once talking with Detective Martinez, the same thing. He had been touched in his family with someone going through it. And again, Agent Lee, she had her twin sister at the time I called, literally just had an operation for cancer, and she has ultimately passed as well. So we were just kind of on the same, coming from the same place. Like, why would someone choose this? Like, it's hell. And just thinking it's just taking so many resources away from all the place. Now remember, like maybe she wasn't seeing cancer doctors. She did that very little, like got in to see consultation, but the ERs, the hospitals, like she was using them to take photos and wasting people's time, wasting everything,
Yeah,
resources in a
you know what?
hospital.
We because there's so much thievery that went on, and I always call it, thievery of the wallet, but also of the soul. She stole a lot of
Yeah.
people's souls. We haven't really even drilled down on that, like how much
Yeah.
she took from hospitals and from medical assets and from other patients in the ER who
Yeah.
needed treatment, and there she is fudging her way in to get pictures when
Yes.
maybe a kid, was out there with a broken arm in pain in the waiting room for another 3-4 hours because Amanda needed her photos for her
Yeah.
scam.
She needed to keep this up. It needed to look very real. And
God,
you know, she was able to pull it off.
it's funny.
It's amazing.
I don't know if I'm addicted to this story because I also have this, and it's very recent, just a few weeks. My brother was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma, and he's undergoing treatment right now. So I'm angry
Yeah.
AF, right? Like you are with your
Yeah.
sister who you lost, and my husband lost his mother, and maybe I don't know if it's anger that has me addicted to this story because I feel like my other brain is on just the tragic loss of all those friends, church members, strangers who wanted to do good by her. They
Mhm.
just that again, their souls were stolen, and that's an anger too. Is
Yeah.
that what's driving us all to like gobble up every last minute of like whatever content you're putting out, like any bonus episodes, and tell me more about Amanda? Like, what is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I look at it, and maybe this isn't the proper term, but like a stolen valor, right? You're
Yes.
taking the stories of true cancer survivors and fighters. She's taking bits and pieces. I mean, she was involved in cancer support groups. I mean, in the indictment when they indicted her, a one of the support group folks said what was so horrific to them was that she spent time and was counseled by a man that was dying in the group like a weekend or so before he passed. She came there to seek counseling of like what she was going through, to learn about whatever people go through at this phase in their treatment, and took that time away from
From
his
him.
family.
Oh, how
He spent
about
like 3 or 4 hours with her. And
since
so
we're
that's in
talking
the
about
indictment.
yeah,
Yeah.
since we're talking about stealing from other cancer patients, which
Yeah.
she did just by virtue of the fact that she was even in a cancer center looking to get
Yes.
some questions answered and photos taken, etc. That's time taken away from the experts who needed to be with real people who were suffering. One of the stories in the podcast, in the series, in the ABC Hulu docuseries that got in my craw was the school. Like when she became the school principal, on lies because she did not have the CV that would allow her to get a school principal job. She would hold, a fundraiser for this other teacher who was really suffering and dying from cancer, took a disproportionate amount of the money for herself because I have kids and a husband, etc.
Right.
And stole that time and energy away from that teacher who
That's right.
died.
Yes.
She literally died of cancer.
Yeah. And with that situation, a couple things. That was so the monies that were raised through the wire fraud that is, doesn't seem like ton, 106,000. That money that she took when she became principal is outside of that scope. It did not count because it was not through the wires and it
Because
was
it's
after
cash,
the
right?
time frame, right?
Oh, after
She
the
also,
time. So after the time
so
frame,
our agent
really,
Lee's
there was a
time frame
window
was
they only would.
2000. Yeah,
Wow.
because when they opened their investigation, it was 2012 to 2016. So they focus on a set time when she's actively posting and actively soliciting money. 2017 is when she became principal. So that, and it was also, she did this after her home was raided by federal agents.
Which is
So,
amazing.
so this is not like, oh boy, I
I
should be
better,
careful.
I better watch my tracks. They're on to me.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
No,
doubling
this
down.
is, you know, I need more. She was working, she was employed.
Can I ask
Um,
you, does Agent Lee with the IRS have any explanation for why they had to stop the scope of the investigation at 2017? Because clearly this woman went right through until the day of probably being locked up. I'll bet
yeah,
even
I
during her
think it's
sentencing
just
she
for
was
the
sending out text
charging
messages for money.
I'm guessing, but it's the charging purposes, like when like, that's the time frame that she was actively soliciting. And then after the raid, the one thing she then took down the support page where the money was coming in. So I think they went for the range that they knew she was actively soliciting money
Yeah,
because she
for
didn't
those
miss a
who
beat. Yeah.
Yeah, for those again who aren't really steeped in Amanda yet, and you should be, run, don't walk. When the IRS does an investigation, a financial fraud investigation, they have to have a literal money trail, and it is digital. So anytime you make any kind of transaction, even if you send a check to someone, if you send Zelle, or if you wire money, or if you do a purchase over the internet, that's literally a wire. It may be a digital wire, but it is a wire, and every one of those can actually be printed out and put on a stack. And that's what the IRS did with this case. They had to have a literal a digital track of every one of these transactions where she got money, and they added it up to about $106,000 or so
Right.
for the case. However, Amanda, I mean, I would say it's tenfold. The in-kind that she took from people, the free babysitting, the childcare, the fly me on your points. I need to go to New York for
Oh
treatment,
no,
and boy, I have a bucket
there's,
list. Give me
yeah, I
shows, give me
just,
concerts, right? Like just so
yeah.
much went her
I
way.
mean, I tracked just on what she was thanking people, so outside of the wires, but they did like individual fundraisers, right? One was about 4,800, another one was about 3,800, a smaller version of her church group gave 12,000. Like all of that is above and beyond as well. So
How
there's
much? How much did you get to?
I got to about between another 80 to 100,000 that I
Double.
could that I mean, and that I still felt was low in the sense that because
Yep.
there was a lot more people giving checks and stuff that like family members that gave checks that also wouldn't be considered the wire fraud. So there's a larger amounts out there too.
Or if it's outside the scope, anybody who gave
Yeah,
outside the scope,
exactly.
that's it as well. And then let's just talk about the cash. I mean, cash came flying at her, and when I say that, I mean it literally. Like you have this great story in the series of the mega church, and there's like 2,000 members in this mega church, right? Where they call people to the stage, and there's Amanda and Corey standing on the stage, poor me, and up come all of these congregants throwing cash literally at their feet. There was a name for it. There was some kind of church name,
Oh yeah, what did they
like a
a loving
giving,
or a giving? Yeah, I forget what they called
something
it.
like that. And they came forward and threw cash
An
down.
offering, an offering.
Okay, an offering. Threw cash down on the stage at Amanda and Corey's feet, and they just collect that all up in their umbrella and take it home. That's not part of it. Any cash transactions, and again, all the childcare, the nanny that they scammed for years and years, who would drive drive 2 hours in the middle of the night to pick up Amanda from the hospital, baloney. Look after the kids, do this, do that. Everybody did things because they felt so bad for them and wanted to help.
Sure.
And they gave them their time, their professional efforts, their professional time, their airline points, their hotel rooms, their experiences, their Broadway shows, their concerts. Like there had to be hundreds of thousands.
There was a meal train that was 2 years of food
You're
that
kidding me.
the church and the community kept going.
They were fed for 2 years by friends and neighbors, literally dropping
And
food
then
off at their house.
she would post, "Thank you so much. Oh, there's so much food you guys are bringing, but you know what would be great too? We could really use gift cards." So then the gift cards started coming in.
Not traceable. That's not a wire, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Not a wire transaction.
this idea that it's not about money or what, it's like when someone's doing this, they know they're asking for money. Anytime Amanda put out, this changed in my health or that, I need this money so that I don't die. It was always a ask for money. I mean, it's not about money. Don't put up a support page to donate money, right? So
It was about money. I mean, look, I think, and let's go back here because I think everybody who listens and watches the series is thinking, why does someone turn out like this?
Yeah.
Like we all have a little gut feeling if we tell a little white lie. It's not that we don't. Many of us do tell little white lies, but usually for the better. I mean, we tell our kids, "Oh, don't eat that candy. Your teeth will fall out." But
Right.
but with her, it started really early. Like you interviewed friends of hers, like even a best friend from childhood, who said it was just the way she was. We didn't think it was a big deal because it was inconsequential. The lies that she told
Right.
didn't really matter, but she was a liar for attention back then.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. It was always something, one thing I discovered, people would tell me about this connection she had with Lindsay Lohan, which, I think, when Lisa first talked with me, she mentioned it to me about Amanda would say she grew up and was best friends with Lindsay Lohan, and they would audition for different things together. And Lisa was like, "Oh, okay," and she talked about it in the podcast. And then when Lisa finally started figuring out, like, wait, this is too much. She's full of shit. Oh, sorry. That was one of the things she confronted her about. She's like, "Lindsay Lohan grew up on the East Coast. You're on the West. Like, that's not true. Like, there's no way." And then I found since then, talking with people over the years, it came up a lot. That oddity of a lie. She would have Lindsay Lohan call young kids for their birthdays and say, "Oh, I'm Amanda's friend Lindsay, and happy birthday." She knows. Yeah. So,
But how'd she do that? How did she get
it was
Lindsay
her.
Lohan to
It
do
was
that?
her. It was her calling.
She was faking herself
Yes.
as Lindsay Lohan?
Yes, that's the only thing I could surmise
Because Cameo wasn't around back then.
Yeah, and it was, Alita's sister for her daughters, another family I met a couple of years later. Like everyone I'm talking to, they're like, "That's so funny you bring up that thing. She told us that too." So I get it. It makes you special. It makes you whatever, that feeling is you get off of that. I saw someone refer to it as like duper's delight. There's must be something you get out of that.
Some charge.
But then to keep going with it, I think it builds upon itself and just, I don't want to say gets out of control, because I think she was well in control of what the money aspect of it.
It's one thing to tell your, sixth grade friends, "I'm friends with Lindsay Lohan," and that can never be checked. And it doesn't hurt anybody either. And she gets
Right.
loads of lauding and attention. It's another thing to move into what I feel like was a progression in this psychosis was the boyfriend in college that I think you interviewed, who said she faked breaking her leg. Was that correct?
Yeah, those were just other our students and stuff from, yeah, she would be in a boot, or it was always something. I did speak to she did have a long-term boyfriend at one point that didn't participate, but I spoke with him off the record really early on in my investigation. And he said, he found it when I was talking to him, he was like, "Wow," he said, "that kind of explains a lot of things over the last, year or so that I knew her, was that she always had lupus. She was always too sick to do stuff, or it would get her out of going to work, or it would get her out, so learning things about that, it kind of, people were like, oh,
She
wait,
told
this is,
she told her college friends she had lupus.
yeah, that was another thing that was, you know,
Wow. I mean, I
yeah.
guess she's lucky that, social media didn't catch up with her from back then because it didn't
Yeah.
exist back then. But
Hmm.
and faked the boot, faked the broken limbs, faked everything. I mean, because you're
As far
moving
as,
you're moving from the little white lies of childhood
yeah.
into the medical lies in college, right?
Yeah, and even Alita, speaking with her when she first came into the family, and of course Jamie had cancer. Um, I think one of the things, she had some type of, I can't pronounce, it was some type of very long back situation. She would tell her that she had this thing wrong with her, or she had that wrong with her, and it seemed, again, when you look hindsight, it seemed like if something came up in discussion amongst others there, all of a sudden she had that ailment, or she had something, or worse, or more, even more rare, that type of thing. So the hindsight is where we kind of learn, oh wait, this started even sooner, and earlier and earlier in her life.
And she started to recognize the difference between little lies and medical lies because suddenly, when you bring medicine into it, A, there's a lot more sympathy, and B, you can't ask questions. You can't
Right.
go there, and you can't get official record, and even police, as you mentioned, can't get it. Like there's Moskowitz, he can't even, or Martinez rather, he
Martinez, yeah.
can't. Yeah, there's Martinez, he can't even get the records he needs to prove that she's a criminal.
Right, and also in the blog, she was specific about certain things, like where she definitely named hospitals, named drugs, and named trials or things she was involved in, and then she got a little more specific in naming like a particular clinic within Columbia in New York that she was involved in. So she kept getting a little bolder and a little bolder, and to the point where she named the doctor. She would refer to him just by like doctor and then the last initial, right? Like, and so it gave me something to focus and
Track.
focus and focus on. And
Yeah.
then there was one picture that she posted from within this office, like a waiting room, and I could see the plaques in the background to see who it was. And I was like, okay, there now I've got something I can dive into. So, she was very careful about putting. She put a lot out, but then the specificity was really like just dancing
She was
around it.
she was sloppy, and you know what?
Yeah.
She was clearly sloppy with her Lindsay Lohan business too, because she lived on the East Coast, and that's usually what trips people up. But it's just remarkable how long it took to trip Amanda up, because I feel like a lot of her stuff was just ridiculous. How she thought she could get away with it, she did though. And again, I think a lot of it is because medical is so protected. We just can't ask a lot of questions. A, we don't morally ask a lot of questions,
Right.
and B, we legally can't ask the questions. Neither can employers. But what's so astounding is that I feel like did you see Don't F with Cats? I love that series so much.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like in my DNA. I feel like you are like the embodiment of Don't F with Cats. And I feel like the rest of us who are true crime fans, we will look at a photograph and instantly we'll
Zoom
we'll
past.
zoom. And we'll look for a detail. We'll say, "I call bullshit. I see something in the background," and it's literally what you did at
That's
these at these
100%.
cancer
Yeah.
centers. So when you were able to do that, how valuable was that stuff to Martinez and to Agent Lee, like to the authorities who were chasing her, or did they say, "I love it, can't do anything with it"?
No, yeah, it was really important to them, because I had gathered a bunch of it before I even reached out, and I reached out to Martinez initially because the source, Lisa, as we know now from the doc, she had said, I left messages on tip lines. I contacted a district attorney's office. She was trying to get someone to listen, or to be like help, help. So that's why I reached out initially, was just to say, are you already doing this? Are you all working on this? And so I had a bunch of screenshots and everything I could gather at that point, timelines. I did a timeline of the entire blog, because she had two blogs, a family blog and a medical blog, and I would overlap them and see, I'm in the hospital, I'm this and that, but then on the family blog, it's like I'm in Tahoe. It's like the just
Didn't match.
crisscrossing what made sense. And then I did. I also would keep all the asks for money, like each time and why she needed the money. And that kind of just helps you look at the inconsistencies or
She couldn't
if
keep
she
her
could
lies
keep her
straight.
story straight. Yeah.
Too many,
So,
too many to keep straight. If I keep,
yeah.
and by the way, she kept a lot of them straight, which is astounding. I keep thinking, and I'm sure you do too, if she had employed her skills, her strategizing, her stamina, and her resilience, towards an actual
Yeah.
job, she'd have made millions, not just a couple 100,000.
Oh, yeah. 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 And this, doing all of this also, she was also, they were under a bankruptcy plan. They had gone to bankruptcy court like 2013 and got a plan put in place to pay back for the bankruptcy. So that was a big motivator of why they needed money, right? They had a payment they had to make every month uh, for that. And that it was a good amount of debt. It was upwards of like 160,000 at the time.
No, the rest of
So,
us get
that's
jobs
no
for that. We get jobs to pay
right,
off our debts. We,
right.
we, we do things like that. The rest of us,
So there
figure it
was
out.
there was definitely a that was to me was a very large motivating factor that, you know, and that was another reason they wanted custody, not just to ruin Alita, because I think that was a big part of it too, but Alita was paying them child support,
They
the
wanted to
small
they
town,
wanted to cut off the money going out to child support and get child support money to
yeah,
come in instead, which is again just heinous when you're talking about what they did
right.
to that
And
poor little girl
in the
Jessup.
little bit of time when Corey was representing himself during the child custody stuff early on, they had 50-50 custody and he was paying Alita, I think it was $75 a pay period, like twice a month.
Oh,
Okay.
for God's sake, all
Right.
that over $150 a month?
Yeah. So
Holy
that's what
shit.
he said. And she, at one point, when Amanda got diagnosed in 2012, she said, don't even pay me. Don't worry about it. You guys said you have a lot on your hands. Yeah.
Wow. So yet again, this is an in-kind donation
Yeah.
that's just evil to its core that they would accept that, and then they went further. That
And
it
then they
wasn't
just
enough.
flipped the script and went full force for
Wasn't
custody.
enough. I
And
want more. I
yeah.
want more.
And the custody also figured in a medical hardship that and this is why you say, allegedly was he involved? He submitted medical records of some sort. I have them that, you know, this was for all this cancer stuff. Thousands
I
and
guess this,
thousands of dollars a month.
and I think what the authorities say is that there was no way. Look, we all have our spidey senses that he knew all along. How couldn't he have? But that they would say there's no way to prove it to a jury that he knew. She could have been duping him too. I mean, that's literally what his story is. And you've got to have the goods if you're going to bring a prosecution against someone. And
Right.
although
Especially
it looked like a
a
duck and
federal
walked like a duck,
prosecution.
couldn't
Yeah, a
couldn't
federal
find the
prosecution
web
is
feet.
tricky. Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to have everything lined up. And so, that was always, I was always kind of pushing back saying, well, he testified in my court case, he testified in bankruptcy, he tested like it's there. It's just, the
And
cost to
she
have that all come together.
and she wasn't willing to throw him under the bus to, ease up on her, I'm assuming.
Well, she was charged with a bankruptcy. So she had two charges initially, a bankruptcy fraud and a wire fraud. And then when she originally pled not guilty, and then about a year later, she changed her plea. And with that, the deal was that they would drop the bankruptcy
Yeah, okay.
fraud charge as
So,
well.
because she's singing like a canary now, right? Like she's had this 25-minute phone call with Charlie Webster from prison saying, all the money that I don't even know if she used the words I stole, but she should have, went to Corey and Corey's divorce and child custody and the lawyers, etc. Like she just foisted it, like she's throwing him under the bus now because Corey's divorcing her.
Yeah. Well, listen, again, the evidence shows that it's just there's no way. The divorce was, first of all, finalized well before Amanda married Corey, right? So that was done and taken care of. And all the custody stuff, like I said, Alita even stopped them from paying because of the cancer diagnosis, and then she was paying them. Yeah, there's just no, and you also submit your legal costs when you're going through these things so you can get reimbursed here
It's
or
on the
there,
record.
for your like There was none of that. So, the gal from the church became the family court lawyer, was it free? I don't know. Was it discounted? Would be my guess. Like this couple was going through this cancer stuff, and then this a person stepped in to help. Um, but there was never.
So it's still she's continuing the lies full on. Like there's not
Well,
even
yeah,
a
and she's
shred.
and in the same breath, she's also blaming Alita, right? She's not even taking ownership, saying, "But we had to do this because of the divorce." Like, no, you didn't. This had nothing to do with any of that.
I don't think she should get good time if the lying continues. And speaking of the
I know.
lying continuing,
Yes.
she went to the emergency in the prison system 24 times in 18 months.
Yes.
And I mean, and used an ambulance to do it. And all the while, there's testimony, witness testimony from doctors and medical attendants who said that they witnessed her malingering with the breath test, meaning holding back on the breath when she was supposed to be doing a breath test, and interfering with her IVs. How is that not somehow part of her prison record? Again, if you're getting out early for good time, this should take that away.
Yeah, all that came to light because they filed to get her a early release because it basically saying she can't get the proper medical care here, so we want her to come out so she can get the proper care
Amazing.
elsewhere.
But I mean, like, it's just like,
So
thank God, can we? I can't believe we're having this conversation. She's in there
well,
for a medical scam, and she's
yes,
using a medical scam to get out.
she's trying. Yeah, the
It's
judge shot it down originally. Like that was a no go. I mean,
yeah,
and the judge referenced all that, saying
but she's doing it anyway. Like
you're
she's
doing it
doing it
anyway.
anyway. So how is
Yeah.
this not? Does anybody care? Is there just not enough staff in the, in the
Well, I think
probationary
she was
system?
the facility she was at the time was a medical facility, right? So there's in the federal prison system, there's only a handful of ones that are hospital, and
Equipped, yeah.
I, the care in those I'm sure is not tip top care, but they have a medical facility, and that is the one it was near where they lived, moved to Texas, and it was somewhat near that area, so that's why she wanted to be in the medical one, right? And then even they there were like, okay, you're bogging down our system, just send her out. Like whatever she needed to do to get sent out to an emergency room, it wasn't the prison one. She was going out beyond prison walls at that point 24 times. So you really got to be putting up a big show if you're trying to.
Do we know what she was? Because Charlie said that she knew that it was not a cancer demand. That's not what
Yeah, they
Amanda was
listed in
making.
the papers it was like lung, heart. And those are things I've heard all through the time. Like she would allude to heart and lung problems a lot in the blog, because it was all caused by the chemo, according to her. That
Well,
she
that
had
wasn't
heart and
happening in
lung.
prison. So
Yeah,
what's her excuse for it
yeah.
happening in
So
prison then?
exactly. So I think that just irregular heartbeat and lung breathing issues, and there was a list of them that she kind of circles back to all the time. So that's what's at least listed in the paperwork that was filed.
The only thing I
And
can think
in
of.
talking with folks, I've been able to talk with folks that have been in prison with her and then have come out, and some that I'm in communication with, and they described to me that she would talk about how she couldn't breathe and she needed oxygen, and falling on the floor and all of this, and then the next minute running up the 3 flights of stairs where they were housed like it was nothing. So
Sure. Yep.
you know,
I'm only thinking that it's possible that the thousands of people she scammed had voodoo dolls. And she was feeling every ounce of it at that point.
yeah.
So I do want to ask you about like the level of her ability to scam people, because usually when we're told that we've been had, we get very angry very quickly, and we just turn sort of retributive. That didn't happen with a lot of people. There were people who stuck by Amanda all the way up to the plea, and there were people who stuck by her after. Help me figure this one out. Why and who stuck by her before, during, and even after it was revealed that she was a big liar?
Well, I mean, I think when you're going through it, some of the folks that spoke with us on the doc, I mean, there's very brave to come out and say, like, that we fell for this, we were drawn through this. But I think it's a tough one to believe that what you saw for all those years could possibly be fake. It doesn't equate. You have to remember she's walking around with oxygen tanks and fainting, supposedly fainting everywhere, and they're helping. They're visiting her the times that she could get admitted for heart problems and lung problems, and again, a lot of, I guess, fainting all the time. It was
It's
a way of
challenging.
getting.
It's challenging
It's really challenging
your,
what you're
yeah,
seeing and hearing, and
your
the early
capability
times
to
that
be a discerning human being was in question. And
yeah,
rather than, really questioning yourself about being sucked into something so impossible, I can understand it that in that respect. But what
yeah, and
about the
then
ones after? What about after a court case and a prison term that they stuck by her?
yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of too many of those. There's a couple of family members that I've talked to that or friends that I guess for the kids' sake they're still involved with for the two boys and helping in any way they can. But for the most part, once because again, all during this time, it's dragging on for so long. They have no idea, that feds raided her house and all this. This was kept, they didn't know. And so when it's slowly coming out and I'm poking my head out a little bit more and a little bit more, she had the perfect excuse with the ex-wife. She's lying. She's making this up. I didn't pay my taxes because, of course, it was an IRS investigation. So it was, I didn't pay my taxes for the money everybody donated. That's what
So
this
I
is
just need
really
to clear
about.
up this little detail.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she was really good. I think she had the perfect out, which was, Alita and myself, and we went to court, and so it even made it look like there was even a bigger issue. Like this woman's been harassing me. Look, we're going to
Mhm.
court now. She didn't tell them that she lost, but it doesn't matter. They just know she has to deal with this,
Right,
and she
right.
has to deal
Poor,
with
poor
this
Amanda,
while she's still going through cancer. So
still sick.
the narrative she was putting out there was was believable, I guess. And
It was like a
so,
layer cake of
um,
lies. Hey, speaking of that, let's get into the nitty gritty of the gaslighting. I mean, there you are, doggedly, professionally doing everything by the book to investigate a liar of this magnitude. She catches wind and she turns the tables on you and gaslights by saying, you're a harasser. And she takes you to court for a restraining order, which cost you $250,000 to defend and win. Just the notion that you lived that, like outside of the difficulty of doing this investigation, just having to go through that kind of thing and knowing that you're right and you're the good guy and the bad guy is making you the bad guy. Are you over that? Like, have you been scarred? Have you got PTSD from that? Has it changed you as a person?
no, 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 I'm not scarred by it. I mean, it was the attorney that represented me because I was represented by my company, and then they had outside counsel. So I had a very fantastic legal team, and that was the other thing. I had like a team going into this little civil harassment thing, and Amanda was there with whatever attorney she had hired, and so it was. I knew I hadn't done any of the things that she was accusing me of, so it was really a matter of being able to methodically explain that and show the evidence once we got to court. It was just the reason it took cost so much and took so long was that this was all happening up in Northern California and I was in Southern California. Each time we had a court date to go to, I would fly up. There was the firm that was up there. I would meet with them a day or two before to go over everything. And then the night before court, her attorney would contact the courts and say she's in the hospital, she's too sick to go.
Oh,
This happened 5 times.
I want to just
So
throttle her
all that
again
prep,
right here, you know?
yeah, flying back and forth, taking time off from work to do this, like all of those things, and then now, so we also had to, with people I don't think are aware, we had to mediate. We had to mediate before the bench hearing. So there was 2 days of mediation where this could have all gone away,
She kept
right?
at it.
All she had to do was provide, we with the mediator for 2 days, provide, documentation via, they were going to do it like just with the mediator, provide whatever you can. And she was supposed to do it second day, no problem, getting everything from the doctors. And then said, yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
I don't have it.
So yeah.
I would be very embittered because for anybody out there who's ever been involved in a legal process, it's like doing your taxes every day. It's
Yeah.
literally like doing your taxes every day, just the amount of work and discovery and just tedious work when you've already got your job, which is,
Yes.
really heavy
Yeah.
duty. And then you've got this massive project on the side, like doing your
Yeah.
taxes every day. So that's why I say, are you scarred? I would be very scarred from it. I'd be very bitter from it, just knowing what a time suck and what an emotional suck all of that was. And it was all
Yeah.
based
I mean,
on
my bigger
her.
issue was my reputation, right? So
Yeah.
I was at the time, a managing editor of a news organization going through this. And then I think that was what was important to me also was the First Amendment issue. Because I don't think she realized that's what this really
This was.
ultimately came about because of her tactics of feigning ill, the initial hearing where I was still in Los Angeles, they never served me properly. The judge awarded a temporary restraining order just on the surface of this poor dying woman, right? And so that was granted like a 10-day thing. And that's a big issue. That was for me, I was just like, wait, this is what I do. This is my job. Like to have that against me that was my larger concern. It was just like,
Again, you're way
whoa.
nicer than me. I would have been going for blood. I
Oh,
seriously I would have hired a hitman.
yeah, no.
So,
But
to that end, I think there is something that I heard, and I want to just flush it out with you. In her, again, just the layers of her lies and deceit are just so remarkable. And I know there's a lot we don't know, right? Just what we do know, the tip of the iceberg is so massive. But and correct me if I'm wrong in this narrative, she sent a letter to Columbia Hospital, to doctors at Columbia Hospital,
yeah.
winding them up about, I haven't been truthful about my cancer and someone's going to be asking you about it. And I don't know if she's asking Columbia to lie for her or what the letter was. But then when it
Yeah.
came out, because you subpoenaed it, she then suggested, nah, I didn't send that letter. I think Nancy must have written that letter and sent it. Is that true?
Yes.
Did I get it right?
Yeah. So pretty, very, very close. What had happened was, so she was flying back and forth these 7 times to New York. And so, several of them took place before I knew about her and then the rest after. So I was watching this in real time. And so a big part of the investigation I did was fact check everything about those visits to New York. So she would say, I'm on this clinical trial, I'm taking this drug, and oh, look, it's the holidays. The doctor's going to ship it to me and I'm going to self-inject this chemo. So all that shenanigans was going on in real time. And I was able to speak to the folks at Columbia, not about Amanda, but just about practices, right? Hey, do you have a clinical trial? Would you ever ship the drug
For
across the
someone to
country
do
for
it
someone
to
to
themselves?
do it at
Yeah.
home? Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds, but you
Kooky.
have to go through that
You got to
process,
ask.
right? Going through that process. And so they were aware of what I was looking into. I had sent them the blog. I had sent them the information and said, oh, hey, this is what I'm investigating. I'd like you to take a look. And they were like, we can't talk about anybody. I said, that's fine. But I still wanted them to see it, right? So they had saw it, and then they had issued, from what I found out when we subpoenaed stuff, they had issued a cease and desist letter to Amanda and said, don't talk about us anymore. You basically like knock this off. To which she did, because she clearly then was, in remission and everything went great from Columbia.
In remission.
But in
Let's be
response,
clear.
right?
In
Yes,
remission,
sorry.
not at all ever having had
I know.
cancer.
I'm
Yes.
constantly doing this.
Right. Right. Air
So
quotes.
in response to that cease and desist letter, she wrote a letter to the doctors in that clinic and explained that she's so sorry to use, take up the resources and take time away, because she did have a consultation, which is not hard to get. You just go in and say, I'd like to talk to you about, my situation. So she had a consultation of sorts. And so she said, I'm so sorry I wasted everybody's time, but here's why I did that. I decided I wanted no more treatment, that I was tired of chemo and I couldn't do it anymore and I was terminal, but I didn't want to let my family and church down. So I told them I was receiving treatment here in New York because I didn't want to let them down.
God.
But I do have cancer. And so, I'm so sorry, but, I shouldn't have done that.
And then she
and-
suggested you're the one that wrote that.
Right. So when we had subpoenaed stuff, they said, oh, we can't give you any of her medical records, right? Because she had in the civil suit accused me of certain things that allowed us to subpoena stuff. And so, but the attorney for Columbia said, we can't give you anything in the medical records, but we have this in a different file.
Because that's
And
not
you can-
medical. That was
Right. So
administrative.
they said, you can have this, which was
P.S.
just about.
I mean, was she or was she not a patient? You said she had a consultation. Did it officially make her a patient? Therefore, all the product it becomes HIPAA?
So we could never, we wouldn't be able to see what they met about and what, what all that was about. But yeah, so that when we subpoenaed records, that's what was sent to us. And not just sent like, oh, here's a letter. The head legal counsel of Columbia signed off on it, notarized that this came from their file, that came from Amanda, right? So and we held on to that to use to impeach her. So it wasn't part of our discovery, because we knew she would testify all about all those treatments that she got in New York, which she did. And then so my attorney was able to pull that out and say, wait, you got these, here's a letter that you wrote saying that you didn't get anything, that you were lying. And yeah, so it was great. Like,
Feather in
it
your
was
cap.
a great moment. It was like that, that you,
Ha 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 ha.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, and then,
okay.
that's when she turned it around and she said, I didn't write that. And then
Nancy
the attorney
must have
asked,
written it.
well, what do you mean you didn't write it? It came from Columbia. She's like, I believe Nancy wrote that.
Unbelievable. Well, it's travel.
So-
They seized her computer. I don't know if they were ever able to get her emails, but
Oh, yeah.
they must have found that she did write, and send that letter.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of letters and emails and things that were confiscated. Yeah.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the other elephant in their family, and that's Peggy, Amanda's mom. There's another one that I keep saying, spidey senses are all over this one, and it just feels like it's another case of, can't prove it to a T, therefore can't waste the resources to prosecute. But I feel like Peggy had to know, and that there's proof she knew. She was emailing people even after Amanda pled guilty, that something about her treatment, wasn't she?
Yeah. And that, again, during the time that I was investigating, I knew a couple of things. I knew when I had to go back and forth with my court case, Amanda brought in some emails as evidence of me harassing her family, apparently. I sent 2 emails to the Support Amanda website, which had the brother's email on it. So I sent 2 emails saying, hey, there's a federal investigation and I'm investigating. Here's my questions about how the money moves around. This is what I want to know. And then after the federal investigation, I sent a second email saying, after the raid on the house, hey, there was just a raid on her house. A search warrant was served. I noticed the Support Amanda site came down. Did this have anything to do with the federal investigation? And I asked some more questions. Those were the 2 emails I sent. Those emails came up in my case because she brought them in as evidence, and they were forwarded to her and her parents from the brothers, and it just said, what the F is this? So I know in 2006 they were dated and everything. I know in 2006 there was clearly a family discussion about a federal investigation and me. So they knew at that point somebody was accusing her of this. And that's kind of where I left off with the family's involvement in that sense. I know they knew of the investigation. So then when we found out and met Rebecca Cafiro and she talked with us for the podcast, that was really eye-opening to me that Peggy had been telling Rebecca, well, no, I sat there with her while she got this.
And again,
so that was
Rebecca,
the first time.
Amanda's really good friend.
Right.
And really good friends with Peggy first, and then became good friends with
Correct.
Amanda. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And so that was the first time I had that level of questioning for me also opened my eyes. I was like, whoa, I wasn't aware of those conversations, obviously. So, but that was really shocking to me as well. Yeah.
We're coming to a close here, but I just, I keep asking this question of anybody who will listen and offer any wisdom. I think, personally, just having followed this unbelievable saga, that she is permanently afflicted with this and will never get over her desire to lie for whatever it gets her, money, attention, you name it, even though she has served time in federal prison because of it. So do you feel the same way?
I do feel the same way. I hope, her actions when she comes out, I could only hope. I hope that for anyone that's gone through the prison system, that they can learn from it, own it, better themselves, figure this out. Because that must be an exhausting world to live in, that you are constantly doing this, whether it's just for attention or this component of money and really destruction. She left a path of destruction, and that part to me was not just, because she couldn't help it. She wanted Alita like wiped out. All of that is just a whole nother type of personality, I think, on top of this. So yeah, there's a lot of changing that has to go on in her world to see if her actions change.
So the next question that's natural out of this one, are you so scarred and exhausted from the decade that you put into this that you don't want to continue, or you can't wait to continue following Amanda's
Oh, no,
story?
I haven't stopped. I mean, I work in true crime. I've been doing this for many years. It's something I enjoy. And I enjoy giving the voice to the victims. And I mean, yes, there's always that fascination with the other side of it, and the people that perpetrate the crimes. But for the most part, I want to give people a platform. And very early on, when in covering this, I always, talking with Alita and Lisa and Jessa, of course, and everyone involved, I said, we can keep this right here. I never have to make a doc. I never have to put it on TV. Then when we discussed doing the podcast, this is going to be up to you guys. If you want the platform, if you want it out there, and together I let them decide. I said, how do you want to handle this? And they really wanted a record of this, because remember, no one knew about this.
Yeah.
I kept it quiet because I knew I want the feds to do their thing. We want her taken care of, and then we can tell the story if everyone wants to. And they really wanted a record of it out there so that if and when she moves on in life, she starts doing this again and someone has something's off. Nowadays, I think people are more apt to Google and look something up. They really wanted something there to say, hey, this isn't okay, and just, hey, be wary. So,
yeah. Well, you gave them a voice, and that's the very least of everything that you've done. You've informed us all. You've put Amanda's face out there. Thank God, because I feel like this is her chosen, vocation in life is to lie, scam, and steal, and the only way you can get in the way of that is knowing that it's coming. So, Thank you for all the dogged work. Thank you for never giving up. Thank you for taking all the punches so that the rest of us can be A, aware that people are like this, and B, be aware that Amanda is not only like this, she's getting out.
Yes, she is. Yep. Thanks for having me.
You're the best. Thanks so much. So appreciate this.
Thanks.
That is it for this episode of Drop Dead Serious. Thank you so much for sticking through this with me, and a big thank you to Nancy Moscatiello. What a dynamo! I just adore her. One of the best in the business, if you ask me. As a reminder, new episodes drop every Thursday of Drop Dead Serious, but make sure that you subscribe and turn your notifications on, because every so often we do what we did today, and that is we drop bonus episodes. I want you to make sure that you know about them when they arrive. Also, I would just love it if you would leave a review, even if you hate it. Even if you hate me, just leave a review. It helps me out a great deal. And it also is very helpful in the direction that we take the podcast. Like, you matter. I really want to know what you are all about, what you think, what you like, what you hate. And that is where I will take our production choices in the future. It's very important. Please also follow me on social media. I'm on all of them. The Facebooks, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Instagrams, you name it. And all of the links, everything is right here for you to check out. And we leave a lot of content on all of our platforms. And if you're watching on YouTube, I welcome your comments. Please leave a comment below. Again, tell me any cases you'd like us to look into. And that is where we will go. You are the driver. I really do mean it. I absolutely adore the fact that you cared enough to be here. Thank you so much. So until next time, everybody, I want you to remember one thing. The truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.